Welcome to Before First Gear, a series where I sit down with top racers to learn how they got started, honed their skills, and some of the unique challenges they faced along the way. Every racer has a story, and I look forward to hearing it. My guest today, Louis Deletraz. Am I pronouncing this correctly? Louis?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Louis Deletraz. You've driven, a huge array of cars, everything starting from karting right up to Formula One cars.
Deletraz goes the inside, takes a position, brilliantly done, holds the line, holds the curb.
Which I'm super stoked to actually learn a little bit more about your experience driving a Formula One car and in Formula 2 as well. And now driving LMP1 and LMP2 cars, endurance series, which is also super interesting.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
As I mentioned, the premise of Before First Gear is getting an understanding of really how you started. And, I think that you're a bit unique in that your father was very deeply involved in motorsports. I know he's won Le Mans a couple times. He drove in a couple Formula One races. Maybe you can talk about when you were 10 years old or so, and you started to get into karting and how that all started at the very, very start of your career.
Yeah, so definitely I got slightly influenced here. I'm born in motorsport on a racetrack pretty much. So I don't remember my first races because I was probably 1 or 2 years old and I don't actually remember it. But there's plenty of pictures of me playing with tires or being in the garage and around. So cars have affected my life the whole time. Probably what made me do it and what made me love it is going through my dad. Obviously, it's such a nice thing to share the passion in the family and be able to do this together with my dad. But also, my mom was always around, and it's definitely a family thing for me.
And how old were you the first time that you got into a go-kart?
I think actually I was quite old in a way because my dad never pushed me into racing. It was more like if I want to do it, he will support it, but it's not like he wanted me to do it. So I would say 8 years old, 7 maybe. But like some rental car for my birthday or stuff like this, nothing competitive. My first competition, I was 10, and when you see now like Max, like Verstappen, and all the new guys in F1 start with 3 years old, and so I was kind of late. I did soapbox racing at 8 years old. This is where I really started competing because we thought karting at 8 is maybe a bit too early. My mom was already at safety, and also soapbox racing was quite fun.
So from there, then you decided you wanted to get kind of competitive in karting, and I'm sure your dad was enthusiastic about that. And then what was your first steps, really? You started in a local karting series. You're in Geneva is where you live full time?
I'm born in Switzerland, yes, in Geneva. And Switzerland is a special country because actually in 1955 there was a crash in Le Mans where an engine went into the tribune and unfortunately killed spectators. So that happened, and then they banned motorsport in Switzerland. So we don't actually have racetracks, we don't have races. It got unbanned just a few years ago. But put it this way, if you want to race karting in Switzerland, you do the Swiss Championship, but it's happening in France, which is a totally different country. We don't have actual real competition and stuff like this, so it's tough. We have many good drivers, I think, for a small country, and I definitely started local, just Swiss Championship, which was called Vega Trofeo back then, with some 125cc karting, or KF3s was called, and juniors, basically 4 years in the Swiss Championship, won it twice. Then tried a bit of international karting, but I quickly realized, wow, international karting is obviously much higher level and also very expensive. So that's when I did straight away switch to race cars.
Have you ever found when you were in karting, I'm sure a lot of the guys that you were driving with that were winning some of the races there are now in maybe Formula One, or you've progressed with them through your career. Do you find that certain nationalities are faster than others?
Switzerland, the level, I was always competitive and up there and fighting for it. So that was nice. I don't think right now any of the Swiss guys I drove with are super high up in motorsport. There was plenty of good drivers, but I'm happy I could make it that far actually. But then, of course, especially for me, the junior single seaters, Formula Renault 2 liters, and F2 World Series. Like I raced with Charles Leclerc, with Gasly, pretty much Lando, George Russell. They were all there, and they were amazing. They are amazing drivers. So the competition was high, and it's pretty cool to have shared that together. And you feel like you see the British guys because it's always raining over there. They learned in the junior years in karting, and they are so much better than us in the wet. So those are things you you recognize, I would say,
But
from your
now it
family.
makes me quite happy to know you're racing with an American team today. Yeah, with Wayne Taylor Racing.
Yeah, American team, American championship with IMSA, and obviously Acura, the factory program behind it. It's pretty awesome. I'm quite new to America. I
Yeah.
discovered it in 2022, and I'm having a lot of fun. So I really love it.
Okay, so let's see. So you did karting for a few years. You got your feet wet. When's the first time that you got into an actual race car, out of a kart and into a small Formula car?
Very young, because I think I was 14, late 14. Basically, what happens, I did those 4 years in karting in Switzerland, did one international race. And funny story, like I remember my dad was there timing and qualifying, and I was like 6 tenths from pole, with obviously not the best team, not the best material. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. Like, really, that's pretty good. And I checked the timing. I was 96 on the overall 120 drivers, and pole position
Okay.
was Verstappen. And I was like, oof, got some work here. So I realized the amount of money that was needed in karting to go international, to go to big teams, and it was not worth it. Single seater Formula BMW back then was definitely cheaper and was an actual car, and that was the late 14s when I got it into it and did my first laps and races in my 15-year-old.
Wow. So racing a season in Formula BMW, it was actually cheaper than doing international karting.
Yes, at that time, yes, because basically it was a Formula
Wow.
BMW Talent Cup, they called it, which was the BMW supported program where they were helping young drivers. It was only rookies, only drivers that had no experience, and they would support it financially. So I think, don't catch me on numbers, but it was maybe $120,000 back then to do a full season, which is a lot of money.
Wow.
Don't get me wrong, but it's also for motorsport pretty cheap.
For me, it was the best one was the Hungaroring at the moment because it's a really nice track and F1 comes on, and I really love it. I did good race there, so it's a good memory for me.
Find the right sponsors, the right things, but it was very, very good deal. When karting internationally, you need to be with the factory team or you have no chance. You need to have a new kart every weekend, new engines, mechanics. It was definitely double the price.
Wow. And so when you entered the Formula BMW Talent Cup, did they do a racing school there? How did they teach you how to drive these things?
So the funny part of this is you need to be 16 legally to actually race and get a license. At least it was like that in Europe. So BMW did something smart. It was called the Talent Cup. That's why only young drivers, no experience. We went to all the big tracks. So we went to Spa, we went to Brenzach, we went to Hockenheim, and it was races, but they were not official. So you could not go on the website and find the result. It was all practice, 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 kind of. And then at the end of the year, when everyone was 16, they had one weekend which was official. It was like a shootout where you win. If you win, you get a prize money, and they help you further join the next category in your career, but you couldn't redo the championship. So that's how they took it. They made it like a practice year, like unofficial racing. They taught you, they had driver coach, they had engineers to help you understand as well the mechanic. They would make us work on the cars to actually understand them, which was super smart. And all of this being under 16. And then as soon as we turned all 16, we raced that one weekend for the money.
That's awesome. Do you remember where were you for that first race? What track?
So I did the triple position of that weekend, which was great. And then I won race one. I finished third in race two, and I was fighting for the championship, obviously. In the last race, well, that was a big part of the drama of my career, straight away. I was leading the last race, and the guy in second was actually also fighting for the championship. Well, it's done, but he didn't break much, hit me, we crashed, and obviously it looked very much on purpose. He got disqualified from the weekend, but I lost the championship and the money. So I finished something like third or fourth in the championship because no points.
Ugh.
But actually, that performance got me in the BMW junior team, which later in my career helped me a lot, and gave me drives in GTs and also obviously in single seater.
So I do want to talk about a little bit still about BMW.
Mhm.
You come out of karting, you've done that for 4 years. You understand the dynamics of the racing line. You understand a bit about car rotation, but going from a kart to a Formula car is like a pretty big step. I mean, the
It's
speeds
huge.
are pretty different. The racing technique's quite different. How did you learn this stuff? You must have progressed quite significantly throughout the year.
It's completely different. Karting has I'm not sure the term in English, but one axle in the back. There is no differential, where a race car does. And obviously, that's a big thing you need to understand for the rotation and driving. So the braking is very different. You need to put heat in the brakes or they don't work. There's downforce on race cars, which is very limited in a Formula BMW. It's kind of like a Formula 4, but there is still. And that's what was great about it. It was a great car to learn and understand, and they gave us enough laps. Of course, in the beginning, you don't trust. Like, it's new, it's big, it's fast, it's loud. And I was 15, which you don't have a driving license. In Europe, you get driving license at 18. So, it was definitely a lot to learn. And I'm very glad I could do this. I think it was the right choice financially, but also for me to learn and develop. I think those things you learn when you're young, they help you your whole career, and they did it very smartly.
And when you were first starting, I guess, in karting, was your father taking you out to tracks on the weekend to just do practice laps? Like, how did you learn the initial premise of where an apex is, or how to actually rotate the kart?
I've definitely had a lot of discussions and argument over the years with my dad. When I was young, obviously I had a lot to learn, and it was great to share because he knows how to drive. And as a kid, you always think you know better, but you don't always know better. And like, yeah, you discuss, you go testing as much as possible. The more laps you can do, the better. It's always like this. The more you can drive, the better you get at it. 100%. There needs to be some sort of talent and understanding. It needs to be natural, but the more you can drive, the easier it will be. And I remember with my dad being on the side of the track. Obviously, we had a team, a driver coach as well, and they would look and they would say, okay, here you can brake a bit later, or here you're actually braking too late and not making the apex, and you then have a bad exit. So you actually compromise yourself. Yes, you brake later, you feel faster, but you're not. And all those things are things that you need to put in your head and understand how to go fast.
All right, so you finished Formula BMW, then you went into Formula Renault 2.0, and then into the V8 series. Is Formula Renault and that ladder system still around today?
No, it's not anymore. Now they made it more straightforward. They have F1, F2, F3, F4. But back then there was kind of two ways to go up to F1, which was Formula Renault 2 liter and then 3.5, which was basically F3 and F2. And there was the actual F3 and F2. The difference was the Formula Renault championships were supported, backed by Renault, and was much cheaper than the actual F2 and F3 back then. And the cars were super nice with high downforce Michelin tires. Makes a big difference. Michelin tires are so amazing with low deck when the Pirelli was on the other side, and it's just different. So yeah, I did the Renault ladder, which I did Formula 2 liter World Series, 3.5, and then I went to F2 because F2 was then later on taken over by FIA and was the only way to go to Formula 1. So before you had two ways, now you only have one.
So it sounds like the big jump. So from the Formula BMWs to the Renault, 2.0. This is probably a jump, but not too big. I would imagine the big jump in learning for you had to come from the 2.0 to the V8 3.5. This is, going to the V8. This is a very powerful car.
This is a very powerful. So there's two big steps. I think karting to whatever car you drive next, and then I think F3 to F2 now, or for me the 2 liter to the 3.5 liter car is a big step in power. Power you get used to very quick. I feel like going fast in a straight line, everyone can do it. But they have so much downforce, those cars. We had a DRS already, so the rear wing that was opening for top speed and closing for going fast in corners. But those cars had so much downforce. The G-force going through your body, how late you could brake, how fast you could go through corners makes actually no sense. I will always remember my first time in Spa I tested. And you have Eau Rouge, which is this very famous medical corner. And it was coming fast. And I was lifting. I was scared. The first time you don't want to crash it, it's fast. And the driver coach comes to me and says, you should stay flat. It's easier. Like, you will have more downforce, more grip because you're going faster. So the faster you go, the more grip you have. But, it doesn't make sense. Your protection, the body just doesn't want to do that. And he's like, just put 2 feet on the throttle. Just stay flat. It will be better. And it's true. The faster you go, the more grip you have. Okay, there is a limit to it, but those cars are insane. And that's the same with Formula 1. It's insane.
I can imagine. And the jump from like a budgetary standpoint, without going too deep into the numbers, is it a
Mhm.
significantly, when are you bringing in sponsors? When does it become just overwhelmingly expensive going, is it once you get into the V8s, it's really you're in Formula 2 at that point, essentially, yeah?
Yes, correct. I think when I drove, so I was there in 2016. The price were still, it was always expensive, but it was still acceptable and it was fair. Now it's insane, and there's a thing bigger problematic right now of drivers to go to F2 because a season right now costs almost $3 million,
Wow.
which,
Wow.
I mean, just think this way: you arrive in F2. I was 19, just 18. Sorry. How do you find that much money? You don't. So I got lucky because obviously my dad knew motorsport. He helped in the beginning, and then I did well, and we found some sponsors who backed my career, and also in Formula 2. But without it would be impossible because if you don't find someone, an actual company that is ready to invest in you, you cannot make it. And I think back then, from Formula Renault leader, there was from 2.0 to World Series 3.5, which was the F2, let's say 30-40% more expensive. So it was still definitely under $1 million.
Yeah.
But now it's like triple, which is, I think, I mean, I don't know how people do it. I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's a big topic today, I think, right? Of the premise of pay drivers versus those who are really needing to find sponsorship and not saying that pay drivers are not as talented, et cetera, but I think it's just become hard for anyone. The barrier of entry is so high in any level of motorsport now.
It's very hard, and I think, except Formula One, there's no drivers that get actually paid or are professional like in F2. F2, you have to. Everyone is a paid driver. Everyone is bringing their sponsors, and everyone is talented. I truly believe. Okay, I don't know them all now, but I can say when I was there, I mean, my year there's probably 8 drivers that were with me that are in F1 now, and I'm sure the
Wow.
top 15 put in the Mercedes back then would have probably finished second or first in the championship. I wouldn't say beat Hamilton, but finish second because the car makes such a big difference back then. Everyone is
Yeah.
F1 worth FIFing at that level. There's just not enough space.
Yeah.
But definitely, like, money now becomes an issue because the more expensive it gets, you might lose talent.
And what would you say, when you were driving in that series and you first got your, initial sponsors, what's the benefit for the sponsors in entering a series like that? Is it they're able to host clients at a race like that? They just want to be involved in it. They want to support your career and hopefully, they're able to follow you throughout your career at that point.
Exactly, that's the idea. I think realistically, when you're Formula Renault 2 leader, the audiences and the amount of people watching is still very low. So it's not true that by putting a sticker, they will get their money back in selling more product. But I think it's the whole story is about bringing someone to Formula One, which then you could have a lot of benefits from it. Even, I mean, obviously profits, but also events, tickets, etc. But on the day to day, for sure, you organize events. They can come with VIP tickets to the events, be in the garage, sit in the cars, be right behind that white line or the wall when the pit stop happens, which is think money can't really buy in a way. You can't buy a ticket to go there. You need to be supporting someone to be that close. And obviously, some people just want to help. There's also a lot of people which, in my case, help but don't want to appear because either they like you or they like the project, they want to support. And I think overall in sports, you need those passionated and the passion behind it.
Let's talk about now the next step, which is you're actually getting into the big leagues now, which is Formula 2. You kind of now have your sights probably set on Formula 1 at that point, which I'd
Totally.
imagine was only a dream when you were younger. So Formula 2, you've now stepped up from the Formula Renault V8 into F2. This is probably the most competitive series in the world. You can argue even more so than Formula 1. The cars are probably a bit closer. The drivers are all similar levels and still going through development. What was that like? How much faster were those cars? All of a sudden, you're racing on street circuits there as well. Yeah, you're in
Also,
Monaco.
that's correct. The power side of it, power downforce wise, from where I came, was pretty similar. The biggest difference was tires because we switched from Michelin to Pirelli. Pirelli have high deck. You need management. Um, so this was something new to learn. Street circuits, Monaco, Baku, very tough, very very tough. I had great success in Monaco. I love the track. Baku, I think I've never finished a race, so there was good and bad. And yeah, there's the pressure because you're the same weekends with F1. So F1 is driving 1 hour before you, 1 hour after you. The people are there, the team boss are there, the politics starts. It, I mean, it was great. I learned a lot. I wasn't always on the good side of the politics. I think, I think I did not bad. I never won, of course, but I had a super license to go to F1. The dream was close, didn't quite happen. But yeah, F2 was definitely a big step in terms of exposure and what it can bring if you do well. Like you feel at this moment, okay, the pressure is there. I need to perform because my chance is now.
What was the first Formula 2 race you did? Was it like Australia? Melbourne usually starts the season off?
No, so back then we did not have Australia. It's on
Okay.
the calendar now, but like F2 doesn't follow the whole F1 calendar. It was like
Okay.
9 events on the 20, well, probably 18 before, now it's bigger. It was 9 races, mostly European. We were going to Baku, Russia still, and one more, Abu Dhabi. So I remember my
I mean,
first
well,
race actually in
yeah.
F2 was Abu Dhabi, the last year of 2016. I finished one race to prepare for the year after.
And so what was it like the first time you're on a Formula One grid, essentially? You know, you're in the same paddock of these guys. This must be rather nerve wracking. You've got the team principals there, as you mentioned, all the engineers, the manufacturers. Like, shit, man, this is it.
Yeah, it was it was pressure. Okay, the first time you're new here, no one expects anything. It's fine, but my first year, unfortunately, I had a very bad team, which it was not a great experience, and obviously I didn't do well because teams are very important there. And I had a rough season. Like it actually impacts your mental health and how you feel about it because there's the talent, but there's also how you feel. If you're confident, you're quicker for sure. But then the year you're in a good team and you can win, there's a lot of pressure because of all of that. And you realize you need also to be surrounded by good people because it's important to have a good manager, to have the right timing, the right people that actually want you in F1 because alone you will not make it. F1 has only 20 seats. Maybe if you're lucky, once a year there's a free one, but it doesn't happen every year. So you need to be the one to be chosen to go on that seat and actually perform that year.
Yeah.
So it makes you backtrack all the work you have to do, all the training, all the understanding, the work with the engineers. It brings you to a different level, and that's also why I think like a lot of the factory drivers right now in or the new young guys in IMSA racing, endurance, Formula E, they all come from single seater because that's where you learn.
I mean, tell me, like, you know, was there a race where maybe you qualified really poorly or crashed? And like you said, you've got to maintain your confidence in order to be fast. So how do you go about from a resilience standpoint? How do have you ever worked with I don't know, a sports psychologist or a coach that's really helping you understand how do you get over this very quickly and just get back to business?
Yeah, I did work with a sports psychologist at some point, trying to understand especially after a tough season, trying to make sure, I was fine. I knew what I wanted. I'm quite lucky in this side because I'm very motivated and I don't give up easily on things. Result is what actually drives me. I want to win. And that's why I try to be in a race car as much as I can because the more you're in a car, the more chances you have to win. But I think, yeah, I had a race in Monaco. I qualified very bad. I was probably 16th or 17th. And I came back to 7th or 8th, something like this, which in Monaco is normally impossible to overtake. And strategy was great, did some overtake on track, I was fast. F2, you had the reverse grid for the next day. So if you were top 8, you can start on 8th, will start on pole, and 7th will start second, and all the way. So I started something like third, and moved up to second, fought for the win. I lost Monaco for like 1/10 of a second, side by side on the line. I couldn't pass. I just couldn't pass. The guy defended so well. And I thought, okay, I didn't win Monaco, but I gave it all. And actually, we came back from 16th, so it's pretty cool. And then this motivates you for the next race. The next race, I was second. And that's where my year actually started. So you think you motivate the team, the people, the mechanics, everyone wants to push to a better job. It is a solo sport in the car, but it's a whole team job, like sports team behind you.
For a place like Monaco or Baku, kind of you're coming from big circuits onto street circuits now. What was the hardest part for you?
You basically get no practice because you have to remember in motorsport, you don't have a tennis court that you can go play tennis every day on. You need a lot of infrastructure, and that's the tough part. You go to Monaco, you have one set of tire, it's practice. You cannot crash because if you crash, you don't practice. You have maybe clear laps, 5 to 8 laps if you're lucky in practice. No clear laps, 15, but 15 laps to learn a whole track where you're in between walls, and if you brake slightly too late, you crash. It's not easy. So the line between commitment, going fast, and being safe and smart is very narrow, and is big time in performance. Because if you push around the whole lap, you can easily find 1 second, which is the difference between first and last.
How about simulators? Before
Mhm.
Monaco, were you doing a lot of laps on the computer?
Yes, as much as I could on any tracks. Still, I would say in 2015, 2016, 17 was not as good as now, but it helped, especially for Baku. I had no idea about the track. Like Monaco,
Yeah.
you play video games and stuff since you're young, but Baku, I had no clue if it was going left or right. So this definitely helps, and also helps to build a connection with your engineer, because we try to do it together. In the end, talk and get to know each other, because that's very important. How you can, as a young driver, describe how your car feels to your engineer is key, and how he understands it as well. So we use simulators, and obviously in those years I did everything for in F1 for Ferrari and Haas in their F1 sim, trying to develop the cars, because that's a big tool in F1, and I also learned a lot technically there.
So go back a sec there, because in 2018 you had a test with Haas, which has a Ferrari engine, but at that point you were actually working with Ferrari as well.
So I was not yet working with 2018. No, I was not yet working with Ferrari, but it was closely linked.
I've
So
got mine just here. So there you
nice, very nice. Of course, Ferrari makes everyone dreams. I have a same for me. So I did simulator with Haas. I'm still very close friend with Grosjean, Romain, and he helped me quite a lot back then when I was in F2, and because he's also from Geneva in Switzerland. And yeah, I was in the simulator. It was going well. They gave me a test. I tested my one and only Formula One test, which was kind of already the start of the dream. I will always remember it. It went super well. The team kept me for 2 years as a reserve driver. Never got the opportunity to race, sadly, but that was for different reasons. But obviously, then we're studying the sim. I was on track with them. I worked with the team in F1 long time. And as you say, Haas had a Ferrari engine, so sometimes they use me in their sim too, because the sim runs, I wouldn't say every day, but 300 days a year, the F1 simulators are running and trying to develop, because there is no testing anymore. It's all we can do.
On the simulator, what kind of stuff are you guys? They're making small suspension tweaks. Can you talk about it at all?
There
What you
is
were looking
setup.
at there?
So there's, during F1 weekends, put it this way, you have 3 practice sessions, which are split in breaks. They will do FP1. The drivers will complain, okay, the car is bouncing, the car has understeer, the car has oversteer, whatever the problem is. We go in the sim. We see, is it matching? Yes. I have the same problem as they have on track. That's already great, because it's very hard to get there. Often you never have the same balance, and it's a bit of a nightmare. Then once you have the same behavior simulator to track, we actually have time to work. So for example, they would go to sleep sometime because they're in Australia or whatever, or we would be in the night because they're in Australia and we're in Europe and it's 2 a.m. and we're driving the sim, driving for 3-4 hours, trying to find solutions. Okay, that feels good. They send the setup over there and they would put it for FP2. And sometimes would be good. Towards the end of the year, I would say often we got it right. At the start of the year, simulation is still not real life. But that's one part of the on weekend where we support. It's like it's a third car, a third virtual car that runs and try to improve. I would say then the other part of the year, we try front wings, we try floors, we try updates on the car before they actually produce them, because it's much safer to try 10 wings in the sim than build 10, and obviously much cheaper.
So if you're the guy testing this, hypothetically, you're having to turn the same lap times as the F1 drivers, so you're as
Yes.
fast as they are.
Well, I think the difference between simulator and real life is if you crash, you press the restart button and you have a new car, which doesn't happen in real life. So you don't think you can judge. Like, it's not because I'm going faster in the sim that I'm better than them, or it's not either. Both way doesn't work. Some drivers are very fast in the sim and cannot drive real cars, or not cannot, but are not as strong in real cars, and vice versa. I think it's a bit about the package, and you can only really compare on track. Same
How
time,
often
same
would you
moment, same conditions.
how often would you crash in the sim?
A lot. The hard thing in the simulator is in the race car, you feel with your butt. You feel the car movement. You just it's through your body because of the G-force, because of the sensations. You don't have that in the sim, so you always feel it too late that you're spinning. Obviously, we get better and better, more consistent, but we are also pushing more to the limit because there is no risk. So you do crash quite a bit. Like, I'm happy there is no damage to pay.
I read once in the Formula One simulators, there's a lot of feedback on the wheel. So when you do crash, it's quite hard on the wrists. Yeah.
It's very hard on the wrist. Like, I drove the McLaren sim, I remember, and they have like something for the neck to simulate pulling on the neck. They try to give you as much feedback as possible. But that sim have been so good. I didn't drive the latest generations. I think Mercedes just got a new one, and I heard it's amazing. But where the sims are actually turning on 360 degrees and the yaw never stops. You have constant G-force, so like I think it's improving. When I drove at Ferrari already, it was so good. You feel bottoming, you feel, they lower the car to see if you're touching the ground, and you actually feel that you're touching the ground, and it's accurate, which is insane.
Wow.
When I did the test in Abu Dhabi, I drove the sim before, and I went on track. It's like I turned already 300 laps. I knew what I had to do. It's not the same, but it gives you a very good idea.
Yeah. And you were working with, you meant Roman Grosjean. Are you learning from a guy like this at that point? A relatively established driver. In the next phase of your career, you're with Robert Kubica, another very established driver. So, are these more senior guys able to teach you things? Is there a camaraderie there? Is it just Louis' competition? So fuck him.
No, I think with Roma, he definitely helped me in F2. I think that the cars were so different that driving technical stuff you can discuss, but like race strategy or tracks, like knowledge, there's a bump here, there's something we would discuss. But you mentioned Robert, and I think Robert is someone in 2021 I barely know, just hello from the paddock. Then we were teammates together for the first time, and we're really, I call him my best friend, I think, today. He's so knowledgeable, has such a history of obviously his accident, but with F1, he's one of the most talented guys out there. And his strength is his technical knowledge. And I've learned so much the past 2 years with him that I'm a totally different driver, I think now, so much more complete. And the understanding of motorsport, I mean, we can always improve, for sure. But without him, I would not be the driver I am today. And I think the success I'm having right now is because I've been surrounded by drivers that have big experience, and I try to be a sponge and take it with me, Now I have my own experience, but having Robert with me was a huge help.
Yeah, this is very cool because then basically after you did some Formula One testing, you got the opportunity to go into endurance racing. So it's LMP2 initially or LMP1?
Correct. Well, actually, yeah, I did first LMP1, which is not normal because I got a call to do Le Mans in LMP1. And I was like, I'm going. But then the year after, I was full time to sports cars, and that was in LMP2. So as I mentioned before, F2, you're not professional. You're not actually earning money. You're not making a living out of it. Where I couldn't make it to F1, I had to make a decision. I was 21, 22 years old. And I'm like, I want this to be my life. So I'm going to endurance racing where there's manufacturers, there's amazing races with Le Mans, Daytona, and there's manufacturers which you can actually work with, which is my situation now. And you actually leave from motorsport, which is a totally different perspective.
Are you paid as a reserve driver when you're doing the simulator activities?
Some do, some don't. Depends on your contracts. Usually, young drivers, you obviously get all your expenses paid. Some get paid, but it's not like nothing. You're not gonna become a millionaire from it. Put it this way.
Yeah.
And it's more often they give you an opportunity to be with the team. You're young. It's like, I take you a reserve. I will help you, try to bring you to F1. So as a young driver, you also don't ask because they give you an opportunity.
What was it like going from an open wheel Formula car to a closed cockpit LMP1 car, which I think an LMP1 car is the fastest kind of racing machine in the world, isn't it?
It's insane. Basically, I've always said this, to be clear. As a young driver, you dream of F1, yes. But some drivers only dream of F1 and don't even consider the rest. Where I'm born into the sports cars world for my dad. And it was never like a plan B. It was more like I actually want to win Le Mans 24 Hours. I want to win Daytona. All those big races, or IndyCar maybe one day, who knows. But like, I'm very open-minded. And that's why when I got the call to go LMP1, I said, I'm going. Then I just went to Le Mans and did my first lap. So obviously it's a straight track Le Mans, very long straights. LMP1s in the race, I did the second highest top speed ever in the track, 355 point something, which is over,
Wow.
I think, close to 200 miles, or maybe even, I need to get a
More,
calculation, but it's
yeah,
very
more.
fast. Yeah, probably more than that, you're right, yeah. And I felt the first lap, I was like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. I don't want to race those things. But then you get used to it. It's awesome.
And so this is your first time, so Le Mans, and then you also came over to the United States, I suppose, for your first time at that point in your career. This is with LMP2 that you actually came and you did Daytona, Petit Le
Mhm.
Mans.
Yes. So basically, I did my first year, 2021, only Europe. And in 22, I did with the same cars. It's always LMP2, which is very strong. Everyone has the same car, very strong category. Actually, it was more cars than LMP1s back then. It was much more healthy grid. And I did this in the last 3 years alongside my Acura and Wayne Racing, which is like GTP. It's like the LMP1 of America.
Yeah.
But yeah, I came to my first time in 2022 in US, and I discovered a different world, a different kind of racing, and to be honest, a lot more opportunities as well. It was a great choice for me to go there in 22.
And the first time you went to Daytona, because this is like your first time driving on banking. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is what 30, 33, 34-degree banking at Daytona. This is a crazy
Yes.
experience. I mean, you have to learn an entirely new technique with your eyes.
Yes, so the prototypes are definitely not as fast on the oval as the NASCARs because we have a lot of downforce and we're not made to go fast on the straight. We're made to go fast in corners. But banking is weird because you constantly have lateral Gs. You want to fight your neck to keep it in the center, like you don't lean. And then I was fighting. I had so much pain, and that's the thing. Like as a driver, you don't want to say you have pain because maybe your teammate doesn't have pain, and you don't want to be the one who complains. And then I'm like to my team, like, hey, dude, I have pain in my neck. How am I gonna do 24 hours here? So he's been in America for years. Like, don't worry, just put your neck down in the banking. It's fine. No one cares. Like it's what you have to do because I've never experienced this. It's just the G-force just pulls you to the right all the time, and you cannot fight it. And also, you don't see far ahead. So the slower GTs and traffic, we have spotters, which I've never used in Europe. Someone high on the grandstand actually calling the slow car so you can move up and down, clears you. It's totally different world, and it was pretty awesome. I really enjoyed that.
My dream is to do a stint in the Daytona 24 and a GT3 car or something like so, maybe in a few
No,
years.
it's a
Um,
great race.
yeah, it was very, very cool. But and the stints that you were doing, it's what, 2-3 hours in the car?
So now there is a rule you can do more than four.
Okay.
Usually you do 2 to 2 hour 30. But like last year, so I did one time in LMP2, and then I did it in GTP. It's called now. So it's the hypercar, the top class with Acura, and I got in the car for the first time at 3 hour 56. I was so tired because it depends when the yellow flag comes out and the strategy. And I mean, we're trained for that. It's fine, but 24-hour racing is long, and we do stay a long time in those cars with traffic and the mental part of it with not making mistakes because you have to go to the end. So it's a different part of the motorsport. It's not single seater anymore.
How are you training for that? Are you cycling? Are you running? Are you stretching, doing yoga?
Yes, so stretching I should do. I'm very bad, but yeah, I will get into it. Cycling, yes. Running, I'm not a big fan, but sometimes you have to. Obviously, gym, core, trying to be the neck as
Yeah.
constant as possible. And in the end, I have a new teammate in 24, John and Taylor. He's a beast. He is doing Ironmans. He's crazy. He would destroy me in gym. I mean, in fitness in general. But I think for the race car, there's people that enjoy being so fit. I just want to not be tired in the car. I want to be as complete as possible, and make no mistakes. And in the end, the more you can drive race cars, the better training it is.
So would you say throughout your career, are there, you mentioned Robert Kubica was extremely helpful for you in the last few years. Is there anyone else that comes to mind that early on in your career really supported you in helping with your education or coaching or help guided you?
Well, I think in my career there's a few important people. So obviously my dad, because he brought me from zero there, and most of my knowledge of motorsport is thanks to him. Then I would definitely put Robert in this. He's been amazing for the last 3 years with me, and we really worked together well. So I learned so much from his experience in F1, and also since his crash. You see that actually life is sometimes you complain about things that you should not complain, because he was signing in Ferrari in F1, and obviously something happened, his crash happened, and he's still back in motorsport and doing amazing. So it's insane. Romain Grosjean also had Romain Dumas, who is a legend in endurance. So I've been quite lucky with good teammates. And now I have Jensen Button in 24 Hours of Daytona, which is also a pretty cool thing. I was
That's very
watching him
cool.
winning a world championship in F1 on TV when I was 10 years old.
Is it who is, when you were in the F1 paddock, who is like the coolest for you, the coolest person that you got to meet or look up to?
Sebastian Vettel, I would say. I was a big fan. I'm still a big fan. And I went there I was young, probably 12, 14. In the paddock, I asked him for a picture, and then I told him I was racing Formula BMW, so I was 14. And he was cool. He did this before, so I just expected he would take a picture and leave, which was already very nice of him. But he actually sat down with me, and we spoke for 15 minutes. So imagine for me being obviously just starting and having a full-time world champion sitting with you, which is your hero, and actually talking through cars, motorsport. This gave me amazing memories and a lot of respect, which I think it's a passion and we need to share it. There is no need to just think about yourself in this sport.
And very finally, this is a big one, and it's asked quite often of very successful CEOs, which is, how much do you attribute to luck versus skill when you look at motorsports? And I mean, you've had it already an extremely successful career. What's your take on that?
I think you also create your own luck with the decisions you make and teams you're going to and etc. But in the end, you also need you need a bit of both. To give you an exact split, I don't know. Every year since 2021 I've had are amazing. I have a lot of success, and I'm every year saying it cannot be as good next year, and it keeps going. There must be at some point, I hope not, but some bad stuff happening. Well, not bad, but some less lucky stuff. And but I mean, I work hard for this, and I push. I would say you need 30% luck and 70% dedication.
Is there something that you would love to drive? Have you ever driven a NASCAR? Would you like to drive a NASCAR?
I would definitely do it, and I never did. What I've realized, since I've joined America, and obviously one of my reasons I also went to Wayne Racing and Acura is because they have long-term programs. Obviously, there's now Andretti Autosport, which is with us because it's Andretti Wayne Racing, and Andretti lately is, I mean, always, but has many big programs coming in. They have the IndyCar stuff, which I would love to test. They're trying to get to F1. I mean, I'm getting a bit old, but I still have a super license, so you never know where life brings you. And I'm very happy in endurance racing right now. So having a wide and open and drive as much cars as possible and hopefully win ever is what I want.
Well, Louis, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and super interesting, man. Definitely learned a lot. And yeah, I look forward very much to following your career over the next few years, and maybe see you back winning the Indy 500 or back in the streets of Monaco. First, Le Mans 24.
Exactly. First Le Mans and Daytona. We need both.